Joining us, by
Gosh,
the
I was
way.
about that.
No problem.
All right, we are live.
Yeah.
Live.
Woohoo.
What's up, everybody?
Hey.
Welcome to the Better Business Brewing live Q&A with JB and the Doc, and featuring the one and only Dr. P. Dr. P, what's up?
Nothing much. Trying to enjoy the lovely weather that is Austin that goes up and goes down. So,
It's cold this
hey.
time of year, right? Doesn't it get cold now?
It was last week. Today was 70 something degrees.
That's not cold.
No, it
It's not cold at
wasn't.
all.
No. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this weather.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's my favorite time of year here in South Florida because I'm not dying of sweat all day long. I love it this time of year. 70 degrees and beautiful. I could keep it like this all year. I would. Then I'd be in San Diego though.
Hey,
Is
you
that
should
the
go to
funny part where
Orlando.
you say we both said 70 degrees, but it's such a juxtaposition, right? 70 degrees, it's hot right now. 70 degrees, it's cold right now.
It's just all about perception.
It is, yeah. It is. So I gotta just put this out there real quick. If anybody's catching us live here, thank you. We're stoked that you're joining us live. Drop us a comment. Let us know who you are and where you're watching from. Otherwise, you're just kind of like one of those creepers that we know is out there, but we don't know who you are or where you are, and it's just like a little. Last time, one of them was my wife, and she didn't want to tell me that she was watching. I was like, "What else are you watching of me that you're not telling me?" I'm concerned about my privacy.
I love it. She's
And
wanting
it
to
had
know what you're
nothing to do with
up
her
to.
being embarrassed that she's his wife,
No.
as far as you know.
That's not quite how she put it, by the way. She said it a little different than that, but yeah.
As far as you know.
I like that.
Anybody who is catching us for the first time, however, if this is your first chance checking us out in Better Business Brewing, the first thing to know, this is a live Q&A. So if you have any questions, you're in the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab, which is our private Facebook community. You're welcome to ask any questions. If you're seeing this broadcast, chances are you can ask questions in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them. We promise we're pretty good about that. We do, of course, it's called Better Business Brewing for a reason. We do this over a nice drink. So today I'm featuring Lake Placid Ubu Ale, which is deep garnet red in color and a dark roasted malt flavor. This is a beer that my neighbor decided he was getting in shape and would no longer be drinking. And so just carried over a bunch of beer for me as if I'm a giant beer drinker. I did not say no. I couldn't say no. I was like, all right, well, so tonight, instead of my usual bourbon, I'm having a little beer. So if you happen to be watching us, if you're joining us and you'd like to tip a glass and have a toast with us, cheers. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. We're glad to have you join us on our last Q&A of the year.
Yeah.
And to keep with the spirit of pivoting, which has been a big topic of this year, I was going to go with some bourbon because I did get a nice bourbon for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But because JB had a beer, I felt like I needed to have a beer. And
Ah.
we were throwing back to our brewery days of when we first started the Better Business Brewing was at a brewery. So I'm like, all right, throw back for the last one. I'm going to have a beer too. So not only did I throw back, I went kind of classic with my beer. And I have a nice, I don't know if it's going to come on the screen, Stella. So I can sound fancy too while I'm drinking it.
I don't know, man. I'm not going to say you're drinking a Coors Light, but you're like the Belgium equivalent of Coors Light right there.
But I'm Belgium, so we're good.
You know what? I'll give you that. Any of our viewers who love Coors Light, this is not a knock on Coors Light. It's a knock on light beers in general.
Oh my gosh. So y'all are drinking your beers and I am drinking my shake. So.
Oh, it's the healthy one. I thought New Year's resolutions didn't start till next week. You're already on it.
It's Dr. B. She says shake, but there might be some rum in there.
I'm sticking to it's just a shake.
What do you got in the shake? What are you drinking?
Some lovely banana and mango. And that's all I'm going to say is in my shake.
The rest is up to the imagination.
My first time on y'all's show, I gotta give a good impression. I mean, the cup is kind of big, right? So
yeah, well, you know what? We're pumped to have you. First time having a guest on the live Q&A. We're super stoked that you joined us. Any of our viewers out there, anybody listening in, this is not the first time we've had a chance to work alongside Dr. P. She joined us on a podcast early in the year, right? Very early in the year. Great episode, great conversation. So if you happen to be listening to this, whether it's live here or on our podcast, and you want to actually tune into our conversation specifically with Dr. P, you can go ahead and you can find that on our episode list on any of the major streaming channels for podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on our website, jbandthedoctor.com/podcast. or is it / I always forget which one it is. The slash thing you use for the websites.
That's why I always just say slash.
Just say slash.
Whichever one I say will be wrong. And for those of you that need a little bit extra help, that was episode 25.
Thank you. What? Yep. That's a great memory. I'm going to pretend like you just remembered that it was episode 25.
Didn't look it up at all. I just pulled it out of my mouth.
I've been taking that up in the background the entire time. No.
He beat me to it. I was like, wait, what number was I? I'm like, oh, let me go look it up.
And if you are listening to us live and you happen to catch this week's episode of our podcast, we did a nice reflection on the year, and Dr. P was also featured on that. So
it's true. I took one of your clips.
It was such a memorable podcast. She got a nice little shout out through that one too. Yeah. So we got a lot of Dr. P this week, which I'm definitely a fan of.
It's pretty cool. So we always open this up for questions, but we're free form obviously in what we do. And Doc, I thought maybe it would be cool just to kind of kick off with our most recent experience here in just the last hour or two, and talk a little bit about hiring and teamwork. And I'll just share with everybody we're hiring on our third employee on the team. So we're pretty excited about that. We're excited to scale into the next year, and we're going through the process of interviewing, and we're really, trying to get a feel for somebody in a quick 20-minute window. And it's hard, right? It's just hard to identify in somebody, hey, are they a good fit in 20 minutes? Doc, curious about your feelings on how that went. And then Dr. P, if you've had any experience with this, would love to hear you chime in on kind of your thoughts and feelings on quickly trying to work through something like that, because it's hard.
Let's hear what your doctor has to say about this hiring experience y'all been through.
So as the one who had to go through about 40 resumes,
I made him do all the work here.
I generally do the heavy lifting. Not going to say why, but I'm generally the one that does the heavy lifting. So as I went through these nice 40 different resumes, I get the interesting thing of, like, you start to see a lot of the same things, and trying to compare which ones we're going to get the interview from was very challenging. And then when you get into the interviews, you can see which ones just did a good job of creating stuff on their resume and which ones actually did the stuff on their resume. So that was like it was definitely a yin and a yang through our interviews tonight, where you can see the ones that really knew what they were talking about and had the confidence that they knew what they were applying for, and the ones that didn't. So just some of that funness of, and the other part too is the one that you think would be really strong doesn't necessarily live out to be the one that was as strong in real life from paper. So it is that challenge of trying to break through that and figure out which is accurate. So my advice is, if you're doing that, is feel a little bit of confidence about what you're doing, but also make sure you are talking to in person and not just taking what you're reading on paper to be the truth. That's my biggest takeaway from today.
Don't believe everything you read online. What?
The resume search is interesting, and depending on where you post it, you get some doozies that you wonder, did you even read the job description? Because some people I swear, they just hit apply. So for me, one of the things I recommend is having a rubric. knowing exactly what you're going to be looking for in those resumes to help you determine who you're actually going to invite to an interview. Because after you get to the fifth one, just like the doctor said, as after you get to the fifth one, you start to see like the same format. You can tell who went to which website and downloaded which template. And some people don't even change the names of the companies they're applying to. And some things are written out really, really nice. So, I mean, even with a rubric, sometimes one or two can fall through and end up in front of you, and you're having this interview with them, and you're like, you're not quite sure who you're talking to right now, do you? Because they've applied to so many different jobs, right? So they're like, I think so. But how they're responding, you're like, nope, you're talking about the wrong organization. And you can also tell the ones who did not do any ounce of homework because they can't even remember anything that they wrote in their resume or anything from the job description. So I always recommend using a rubric to help you figure out who you're going to pull from those resumes, and then using another rubric to guide you through that interview process. And because that really helps you to stay focused. Because even some who start off really awful, they can surprise you at the end. You're like, whoa, you can handle this. Are the ones who start off really good for the first 10 seconds and then they go down really fast. So the rubric has helped me out so many times. And in the end, just tallying it up, I'm like, I thought that one was the best one. Guess not. This other person actually answered those questions by far better. So rubrics help me.
And so we had that. Go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to add a little trick that I employed for the application, because I think what Dr. P said there happens a lot where they're doing this copy and paste on applications and just applying for everything. Inside of the directions on how to apply, I make them change the title of the email from whatever I titled it to something specific. So when I get those emails in, if they haven't changed the title, then I don't even bother looking because they don't have enough attention to detail to even have the job.
No. I mean, my big takeaways with this, Dr. P, you really spoke to self-awareness on both party sides, right? There needs to be self-awareness on what you want, which is the rubric you were talking about. I think the person you're interviewing needs to have some self-awareness, whether or not they actually are a good fit for what you're offering, and you should be able to kind of establish that pretty quick. And I think you and I, Doc, experienced that. A big thing that sticks out to me here, though, is too much, right? And you get to a point where you get too much information. I think that the magic number is five pieces of information and more, and you start to make worse decisions. And I think you got to treat candidates when you're hiring almost the same exact way, where it's like, hey, if I can settle in on 5 or less, I'm going to make a pretty good decision here. If I'm trying to work around a larger number than that, I really increase the odds that I'm going to make a poor decision or get caught on information that's not really as important as it should be, right? I lose sight of maybe the priorities for the hire. So to me, that's kind of a big takeaway as we're going through this. And one of the reasons why I was so happy to, I'm going to just say delegate that aspect to the doctor. Just, hey, you filter this down to like our top 5 or so. And, obviously we interview more than 5 or invite more than 5 to interview, if only because we know we're not going to get everybody we invite to actually show up, which is just an indication of the world we live in today. By the way, if you're joining us live, thanks for joining us at Better Business Brewing. Let us know who you are, where you're watching from. And if you got any questions that you want the 3 of us or any individual one of us to answer, throw them in the chat. Would love to hear from you. And like 2 of them just ran away. So the moment I started speaking to them, they're like, we're out, we're done.
It's so funny how they do that, because you don't know who they are.
You're looking at me.
Yep.
I mean, it's not every day that you get to have the triple B inside the EML and work with 2 doctors, one with P and JB. We got a lot of initials going on.
Yeah, we do.
It's the night of initials, and I'm loving every second of it.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, JB, like what you were saying, it's only so much information you can take in, right? And with that decision making, that's why I remember doing interviews years ago, and you're doing it subjectively, and you lose sight of a lot of things. That's why when I really found out about the rubrics back in school, and both times I did my degrees, you know, I'm like, hey, this helps me, because as soon as I get through that part, it's like that is gone. You know, I go to the next one and that is gone. So that way I can actually focus on the question I'm asking and can really listen to how the person is responding. And then I move on to the next question. So that way at the end, I can look up how I actually scored it. Because most of the time, how you scored it in that interview, that was your initial reaction to them. You know, so you're not sitting down going, oh, but I think they may, but maybe if I had, you're not doing all of that. You know, you're just doing instantly, okay, like he says, 20 minutes. What is this person showing me in 20 minutes? And is this somebody I want to be working with? Can they actually do this job? Or they just found some things online and fluffed up their resume? So that's always one that they love to do.
And the other reason I think that's so important, Dr. P, is, you know, as we know from the psychology world, what do we remember? So if we're doing a few interviews in a row, we're going to have that recency bias come up.
Yep.
So the last person we talk to, probably the first person we talk to, are going to stand out the most to us because those are the ones that stick out, and that's how we remember it. So if we're trying to score it after the fact without having those consistency in questions, you're going to just go, oh, I talked to that person last, and they're going to score the highest accidentally. Or the lowest if they really screwed it up. But most times you're not going to get an accurate judgment of what you were thinking. So it is important to be consistent when you're following through that thing. So you're asking the same questions, you're comparing apples to apples when you're getting those responses.
So can I put you two on the spot?
No, you can't.
No.
Not for free.
I just want to know, like, truly, if you've got 20 minutes to make an impression, are you doing anything unique to try to stand out in that 20 minutes? So if you were applying for a job, hypothetically, you hung up your hat, no longer going to be a business owner, I'm going to go apply for a job. Or let's say you're applying for, I don't know, for an award or recognition or something, right? How do you set yourself apart if you have 20 minutes? What would you do?
I'll just be me. That's just me. I just come in and be me. Of course, I would have done some research.
Coming in hot right here. Just owning it. All right. Yeah. Just do some research.
He's like,
right?
I'm charming as AF. I am.
Yeah. I'm just being me. But honestly, the research is what sells you when you really want that position. Because when you can just be you as you're responding and drop a few nuggets in about that organization that you're talking to, it doesn't have to be a whole recite of their vision statement, mission statement, all their strategic goals and what they accomplished in the last 5 years. All you got to do is mention a few phrases of what you remember reading about them. And that's what has gotten my attention from people I've interviewed. I'm like, oh, wow, so you actually looked it up. And the funny thing is that person may not have spent hours on a website researching my business, but they remember at least 3 things and they made sure to drop it at the right moment while being them and answering the question. So yeah, that's my takeaway. I'll be me.
Absolutely. Preparation. I mean, when you prepare for something, you're not going to get shocked. Like, you're not going to get rattled if you know what you're talking about. So you have the experience, you're already trusting that. You already know that you're, like you said, entertaining, educated. You're going to bring all those things that you're bringing in naturally. So a little preparation just to know what you're talking about and who you're talking to, more importantly. Remember, it's even in the interview, it's really not about you. It's still really about them. Same as doing a sale, right? Like, so you're just selling yourself. You're just going to be listening and talking to the person and getting their attention by what they know.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, it is a sale. I mean, you think about an interview, like, what are you selling? Absolutely. You're selling, hey, if I'm making $100,000 salary for the next X amount of years, I mean, I'm pitching a $300, a $500, a $700, $1 million sale. Like, people don't necessarily think about interviewing that way, but it's all the same. Whether you're in front of a prospect that you're trying to sell something, or you're interviewing for an award or a job or whatever it happens to be, there is a lot at stake. And I'm curious, I guess, Is it purely I feel good because you clearly care and you prepared and you put the effort in? Is it also like an ego stroke thing for people that are doing the interviewing to have that happen? I'm just curious from your perspectives, psychologists and your backgrounds. Is it more
what
than
I'm
just
gonna say right away?
Yeah,
more than
of
one
course.
thing.
I know. I always know what you're going to say. It's always the same.
And it is, right? And more than one thing can be true at any given moment.
And it depends. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to put the words out of your mouth, but go ahead. Go ahead.
But that goes back to the consistency, right? Like my message is going to be consistent because it's true across all the boards. And more than one thing can be true at any moment. And I think both of those things are true, right? It is playing to the fact that you did a little bit of work, that you're prepared. It also is stroking their ego a little bit, which everyone likes. Mm-hmm. So you are getting multiple benefits from that. And anything that we do, we're not trying to do one thing. Little fun. Does anybody ever watch Good Eats, Alton Brown, the chef?
I've seen it before.
So he's a very scientific chef, which is probably why I love him. He teaches the science behind everything he does, not only just how he does it. But he always talks about unitaskers, like in the kitchen. You should never have a unitasker. There shouldn't be anything that only does one thing, because that's a waste. He said the only thing in the kitchen that should do one thing is a fire extinguisher. Other than that, everything you have should do multiple things. And I think that's true just in our world, in any world. Everything you do should be hitting multiple angles. You're not really doing anything for one reason. You're doing things for multiple reasons.
I can see that. Because, I mean, in an interview, if somebody tosses in something about me, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so you've actually checked me out, which is a good sign because it means you've checked out the person who's going to be your supervisor. And after you've checked it out, you're still interested in, you still showed up for this interview. So it says something about the person. That research, it helps out tremendously. And again, you just got to drop 5 words here, 3 words there, just to reflect the research and preparation you did, and just bring it all together. Because that truly, truly helps and makes a difference. I'll tell y'all a funny story, and everybody who's watching. So there was a time when I was doing some interviews where I was working before. All excited, I got the phone call from the front office. My interviewee is here. I'm like, all right, let me go, and I'm going to escort my interview back to the room and just get this stuff done. I get there and I talk to the receptionist and she said, oh yeah, there's your interviewee. And I said, hi, called the person's name. The person says, hi back to me. Who are you? Yeah, talk about first impressions. So the receptionist goes, that's Dr. Kuser. Response, you're not a man. Yes.
Interview over.
So that was my first impression of that person. They thought that by my name, they overlooked the Priscilla part. They just thought that by my name, I had to have been a man. And as we were walking, they proceeded to tell me the full description of the type of man they thought I was going to be. But they're so happy that I'm not a man and that I'm a woman. And they're really excited to be working for a woman. And I'm like, okay. All righty then. Yeah. Interviewing is so much fun. So much fun.
That one was an easy one.
Yeah, that is. I'll share this little tidbit that doesn't get used enough, Doc. We talked about this in one of the really, really early podcasts we did. Just using somebody's name often in a conversation. Turns out that most people's favorite word in the human language is their own name. Mm-hmm. And so the more you say somebody's name, they just happen to kind of like you a little bit more. It's amazing how it works. That's a simple trick. That's not like an overall technique to stand out. But if you got 20 minutes, you want to stand out. And I agree with preparation wholeheartedly. It's a very simple way to set yourself apart. This is just a nuance in language, using somebody's name often and repeatedly without being weird about it, by the way. So some people would be like, hey, Dr. P, how are you, Dr. P? I love how you joining us on our show, Dr. P. Dr. P is amazing. And it's like you said Dr. P 17 times in 20 words. That's a little off kilter. It's like somebody watching a live stream and not saying who they are, where they're from, not calling anybody out here. Right? Just a tip, though. So if you're trying to stand out in 20 minutes, that's a good little trick to utilize.
Our audience would never do that. They would never watch us and not tell us that they're here.
They shouldn't.
No. Well, it's fine. I don't mind. I don't have an issue with that whatsoever.
People warm up differently. You have people who probably watch all year round, and next year is going to be their year where they finally say hi.
So I'm like totally that person that like I'll watch everything. I'll be a part of all these groups. I'll do all this stuff and nobody will ever know I'm there. I'm like that, like, the wallflower where you won't know I'm involved, but I'm just like kind of absorbing everything and being involved. And the doc's looking at me like I'm lying and I'm full of it because I love to talk, but it's true. I like to be silent in large groups sometimes.
We did have a couple of questions that we should probably look into, JB, in the comments if you want. Not to cut you guys off, but I want to make sure that we have time to get to that, and then we do have a big conversation about resolutions versus goals at the end here, because this is going into the new year.
Goals.
Mm-hmm. And, so do we kick off with the goals question? That comment of hitting their goals. It's a challenge.
We can wrap on that. We have a couple of questions from our listeners, so we want to make sure we get them first.
All right, what do we got?
So we have from Brandon Hurd's sphere of influence. So I'm guessing that's all I have on the question. So these are things for some of our members stopping from hitting their goals. And Brandon Hurd mentioned that his sphere of influence is stopping him from meeting his goals. So, or maybe it's a challenge. So I don't know.
No, I think that's his challenge, Doc. He's struggling to hit his goal.
But why? But sphere of influence is part of it.
I thought that was a business name. I thought Braden had a cool business name, Sphere of Influence. That's a really cool business name, man. I want to know what this dude does. So he's saying he doesn't have the right network around him to hit his goal, or he's struggling with having the right network around him.
These were handed in early to us by Brandon. So if you're here, we'd love to be able to get a little more clarity on that. If not, we'll just go with the idea that sphere of influence is helping you prevent you from doing that.
By the way, Doc, if you got 20 minutes to make an impression, don't keep saying the wrong name. It's Braden. It's not Brandon, man. It's Braden, I think. Braden.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I can barely see the screen right now, and it's not because of the beer.
Sphere of influence, your network, who you know. Dr. P, you want to kick it off? You want me to start off here or what?
Well, seeing as how we only got the 3 words to go off of here.
Sphere of influence.
We're going to go the route of Braden. I'll go with Braden. Let's call my name. Braden's having an issue with getting access to who he considers to be his sphere. And I'm really not sure what he's struggling with here.
So let's just pick a topic on that and just say that, how to get a sphere of influence and how to build it.
Okay.
We'll take that one as it. And I mean, it could also be how they bring you down, but we'll think more positive today.
Yeah, we'll think positive.
well, even before we go into it, just kind of conceptually, it's your sphere, your circle around you, scale of 1 to 10. How important is it to your business?
It's 10. It's very important to my business.
10 out of 10. Doc, What about you?
I'm going to say 8.5.
Can I be that guy that's like 13 out of 10?
Yeah, you can. It's your show. You can do anything.
I can do whatever I want. Yeah. I'm not against that. Who you surround yourself with. There is a book I never read, right? And in that book was a story about how your life is kind of like a bus, but not a large bus, right? We're not talking a large school bus or a city bus. Think of it like one of those small school buses, right? That only sits like 4 or 5 rows of people. That's your life. And who you sit on that bus is kind of who gets you through your life, right? That's going to make or break how you do in your life. To me, that's the sphere of influence in a heartbeat. And I heard that from somebody else, and I never read the book. I couldn't tell you what the name of the book was or who wrote the book or who to attribute that to. But what I can tell you is that stuck with me because I'm a firm believer that who you surround yourself with is very much going to influence and impact your ability to do business. So I am going to stick with the 13 out of 10. I think this is hugely important.
Yeah.
Well, of course,
That's who
because you surround yourself with me, so you have to think that.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
just gonna have a drink.
Just
And
have a drink there.
Which is why I'm down at 8.5.
Hey, yeah, Dr. P, I feel like you should be a little concerned about this too. You're here with us in the circle tonight.
I know. I'm like, what?
What do you think brought the number up? You're
Brought
lucky
the
she's
number
here.
up.
Otherwise, we'd be down like at a 6.
Wow, what did I do? I didn't get him a
Damn.
Christmas present. This is obviously coming to bite me in the ass. Right? Clearly, I should have got that Christmas present for you. You lied when you
should've.
said you didn't want a present.
He lied. He lied.
We
He
also
lied
learned that
so-
Braden is a realtor and a salesperson, so that helps a little bit with understanding why that could be a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you definitely have to find out who those people are. And when you are now starting out, a lot of people just want to make money, right? Straight out the door. But you got to put that time in to build those relationships, because no one is going to just open their door and welcome you into their sphere if they don't know anything about you, and if you're not taking the time to learn about them. So it's a two-way street for building that relationship. So that whole referral process just happens so naturally rather than forced. But it takes time to build those relationships, and people don't always like to take the time to set that foundation to build a meaningful relationship. So that's what I'll go with. He needs to
lost art nowadays.
And even in JB and the doctor group, and with the other group you guys have that I always call wrong, the entrepreneur lab one. I feel like I'm
EML.
mastery. EML. That's what I remember.
It's
And I'm like,
okay.
what is the M for? The mastery lab. In there, that's an amazing group of people that if Braden is in that group, he reach out to people who are in there, comment on posts that people put in there, answer questions, toss a question out there. And then before you know it, you're going to get to see the 2 or 3 people who are always responding to you. And they could be ideal for your sphere of influence. You never know unless you put it out there.
And if you're watching live from Facebook, not inside the lab, our awesome VA, Antoinette, threw that link right in the comments for you to make it real simple to click on and join. Because we like to make things easy for you.
Well, can't get it wrong there. I will say that in Dr. P, I'm in full agreement with you. You got to put in the effort, but I think there's something to be said about being very deliberate with building your sphere and your circle. And I'm going to refer to COI, Center of Influence. I've worked with a lot of realtors, loan officer in one of my businesses, and just, working with realtors is very natural for what I do. Anyways, there are a lot of realtors that really don't get Center of Influence business building. And Center of Influence is just, who is my client, right? Who's my client and who is working with 15 of my clients every day, right? Now, I don't want to meet one of my clients and have them in my sphere. I mean, that's fine. That's how I close business. I want to be close with the person that's sitting with 15 of my clients every day. And I want 12 of them in my sphere, right? Because then I've got, I don't know what that number is, 150 or 180, people in my sphere daily that I have the opportunity to be introduced to. And that's a real key. So as a realtor, as a salesperson, if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, well, who is my sphere of influence? Who is my center of influence in my sphere? I was talking to a realtor I was helping out where we identified, hey, divorcees are her clientele, and that's who she wants to work with. And she goes, all the divorce attorneys are impossible to work with. It's too crowded. The space is too competitive. I sat back and I said, well, what about the mediators? What about the people that are helping prevent divorce? Because trust me, even if they're trying to prevent it, it's not always happening. What about the counselors and marriage counselors and therapists that are working with these couples? What about all these groups for, recent divorcees, it's not a specific group for recent divorcees, but let's say I want to do paint by numbers. Like, who's going to be at paint by numbers? There's a really good chance it's going to be somebody with a bunch of their girlfriends or their friends just going out and having that. Probably not somebody with a bunch of kids at home, that's married to their spouse and trying to like juggle a household, right? So there was certain centers of influence she could tap. She had never put thought into it. She'd never gone after because divorce attorneys were too crowded. Well, great. That's fine. Divorce attorneys are too crowded. You don't want to go direct to the divorce attorney. You want to be close with the mediator and get the mediator who's close with the divorce attorney to then introduce you warmly. And that's how you break through the crowd. So that's kind of a deliberate way to build out that sphere of influence that could work really well if you're a real estate professional.
It really does. And if Braden is in real estate, that's what you said, Doc? He said he's in real estate?
Yes.
I mean, something simple like some landscapers, plumbers. I mean, you'd be amazed how those connections could work out for you. Not necessarily going after the big name contractor, but the little guy, the plumber, the electrician, the landscaper, the painter. Those are people who never know could connect you to the sale of your life, right? You never know. But you still got to take action, regardless of which route you take. You still got to take action.
So I want to come in from a different angle. I think both of you did a great job of explaining logistics and the skill involved in building that influence. I want to come in from like the mentality and the emotional component to it of actually building out that sphere, right? I think most people get stuck because who's our first center of influence? It's usually our friend group, like people that we've known for a long time. That's the people that are influencing us. And unfortunately, they don't always match our business acumen and our goals to grow our business and our needs and wants in that field, because they know us in our personal life. They know our world. So trying to mix those two sometimes is a challenge, and we get frustrated. We get caught up in keeping that center of influence strong, and helps prevent us from building out new centers of influence that could be more productive for what we're trying to accomplish in business. And sometimes there's that mindset around that, because like, oh, does that mean I have to break up with my friends? Do I need to not, hang out with them anymore? And not necessarily, no, that's not what I'm saying. Don't end all your friendships. What I'm saying is then you just add on to another center, or you build out different branches to it. There's different areas and different friends that can do different values in that center of influence, and they can have different roles. So they can still be your emotional support. They can still be the people that you talk to when you're having issues, but you can build out from that. As I said earlier, more than one thing can be true. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in that, and sometimes truthfully, we get discouraged because we're not getting support from that center, the initial center, that friend group that we think is helpful. They don't always have that same understanding of your goals. They don't understand. They might not be entrepreneurs or service-based professionals. They might, do 9-to-5 jobs and think that's what you should do and think you're crazy for going out on your own. And that gets very discouraging. So it's okay. You have to know when to just change what that center, what they represent in your life and their goals inside of that center of influence, that sphere of influence. Assign them new tasks, new goals, and understand that it's okay that they don't have to do all of them. And I know that just prevents a lot of people. People get kind of stuck in that world because they're afraid to do that.
Can we address the elephant in the room, that sometimes the people you're closest to are like the least likely to do business with you? And while they might be, happy to make introductions for you, the chances of them being really good centers of influence for you are probably pretty low. A lot of people struggle to get over that. You're going to force a lot of sales if you're trying to work only with the people you're very close with.
You're going to burn out fast too, because you're going to start doubting yourself. It's just like the doc said. I mean, with the fear is going to come the doubt, because if they don't understand what it is to be an entrepreneur and they believe in 9-to-5 and why are you not doing it, then you're going to keep pushing at doors that don't want to open for you. So you end up burning yourself out or just giving up because you think this isn't worth it.
Yeah, they have that idea of what they know of you too, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they knew me before I was a doctor of psychology and didn't understand that process going through it, because they knew me when I was in the hospitality world, or they knew me when we were growing up playing, sports together or drinking together, or whatever it may be. So they have this pre-known conception of you that doesn't always fit. And that's no fault of theirs. That's just how they've known you. And it's hard to change that perception, because there's so many years of that perception already built up for them. It's hard to introduce something new to them that's going to override that. That's just how our mind works. It's, like changing behavior. It's no different. That's their behavioral view of you. And so instead of putting that energy in trying to change that, that's when you want to expand it. You give them a new role in that center, and you expand your center to include people that can support you in those worlds. And not everybody in your center has to have the same. You want them to have different strengths and different goals and different things that they bring to you. That's important.
Do you think most people are good at this, or you think most people could get a lot better? Just curious, in your experience.
I think they can get a lot better because networking is not easy. And a lot of people don't understand what it means to network. And if you go back to even something simple like making a friend, a lot of us don't like making friends past what, 25? We don't want to make new friends because we become stuck in our ways. And whoever we're friends with by the time we hit 25, they all know us, right? And then when you go and you meet new people, you're like, oh, I got to start all over again. And this is coming from somebody who's lived 4 states and 3 countries, right? So it becomes a challenge when you are meeting somebody new. And just like the doc said, now you have to decide, how do you want them to perceive you? Because that's how they're going to keep you in their head for probably the duration of your friendship. So when you're doing the networking, it can be a chore, especially if you're not a big socialite. It can be a chore. It's like, how do I get out there and how do I talk to people? And then there is the big R that people fear, and that's that rejection. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, I'm going to go and say, hi, JB, nice to meet you. You know, here's my business. And JB turns around and I'm like, oh shit, he don't want to talk to me.
I would never.
So much energy, you know, just to say hi, you know. So for some people, it's just that rejection that they build up so huge in their head that they don't even give themselves a chance to say anything. But y'all said y'all got questions, and we kind of running out of time though. So
well, we just had a nice comment from the incomparable Jessica Kohler that she agrees with me because, of course, yes, she totally has to grow her circle outside of her personal friends because they just don't think of her as a business owner, much less as a professional organizer. Her family and childhood friends see her as messy, which we know as a professional organizer, she's very, very strict and very organized. So yeah, I think that is right on. It's hard to change that mindset of people that know you in a different circle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't know that you grew up.
Yeah.
Jessica said she did grow up.
Go, Jessica.
Sometimes. I grew up in certain ways and not in others. So I can understand why it can be confusing to them.
Hey, we did have another question just pop up now. I'm gonna pop this up here. I'm putting it there not because it says hi, awesome coaches and Dr. P. That includes me, by the way, Doc. So you know.
Oh wow!
Hey, it's all up here. It's all
more than one thing can be true. You are awesome. You also could be a 7 on this SOI.
Oh my god, my gosh! So distractions are a challenge to hitting goals. Man, have we talked about this quite a bit? Yeah, distractions are a challenge to everything, aren't they?
Squirrel.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just chase that squirrel. Let's go.
You know, we have a time challenge we did in November in the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab. Link is in the comments earlier, and we're going to be doing it again end of January. And this is an entire day of what we talk about is just managing to distractions, because you look at the statistics today, and it's 150 times a day we check our email. It's 100 plus notifications on our phone a day. Half of people don't turn off notifications. People don't use things like the focus tool on their phones. There's a million and one ways to manage to distractions, and most of us have been trained not to. And technology's trained us not to. So distractions, really big issue out there, real problem. And sometimes it goes beyond the superficial. And when I say the superficial, I just say all the incoming noise that happens. Sometimes it can be a lack of passion for what you're doing. And I'm not suggesting that's the case for this individual. Just we see that, right? We see people who aren't passionate really struggle. It's very easy to get distracted when you're not passionate. More often than not, though, what I find is people just haven't taken the steps to remove most of the distractions out there that they can because they're afraid to for a lot of things. You'll hear people say, well, I can't possibly turn off my phone. That my phone needs to be answered. And I'm sitting there going, well, get a virtual receptionist for $30 a month. You're telling me somebody else can't answer the phone and triage what's important to you, right? Like I struggle with that a little bit as a coach because it's very easy to allow the fears to enter our heads and our patterns to continue, right? Unless we do something to disrupt that pattern and realize, oh my gosh, I can survive with this change in how I do things. We're gonna be very open to continuing to be distracted because we're scared not to be.
Yeah.
It's a hard
stance.
stance.
In the know. People always want to be in the know. I mean, for me, once my work day starts, my phone is on silent. So
yeah. Which I can't do that. I mean, I don't do that, Dr. B. I'm the first to admit that's hard. It's really hard to turn the phone on silent.
It is. My phone's on silent and it helps me to focus. And even I got an update on my Mac now that I could do the focus thing and even shut off notifications. I'm like, what? New feature, let's use this. So, and you can tell it when you want it to come back on. Because there's sometimes when we do need that uninterrupted 60 minutes to do whatever, whether it's one thing, 4 things, 10 things in that 60 minutes, we do need it so we can get it done because that thing came on your list of things to do for a reason. It's attached to a goal you have, which is attached to your bigger strategic plan. So it is important. And if you don't get it done, then you don't get that success. But then sometimes some people are so afraid of the success that they set up their own self-failure with all the many distractions and then blame it on distractions for not moving forward.
Yeah. Doc, it reminds me, I don't know if you remember, we were on a podcast of Coyote Inc., which is a marketing firm out of Canada. It's a podcast for small business owners, and Thomas Wu had us join, right? And chat. And he brought that up. We were talking about time blocking and carving out time on the calendar for your priorities. And he kind of had the counter argument that, myself and a lot of other small business owners would turn around and say, you cannot block off time on the calendar where you are incommunicado. And I did challenge him on that, Doc. I kind of said, I just think you're not prioritizing it. You're making this up into your head to be bigger than it needs to be. I'm not saying block out half the day, but maybe you need to block out a couple 30-minute chunks for 2 or 3 really important activities, whatever they are. For me and my one business, every Tuesday mornings, phone calls outbound to my clients, always. Every single client knows every single Tuesday they're getting that call from me without fail. I don't allow anything else to disrupt that. That is sacrosanct. That is a ritual in my business, and it needs to be because client communication is essential in that business. That to me is really important. So I think you hit on a really, really big point there, Dr. P.
Woo, woo, woo. Cheap plug alert. So this is where I come in. Well, I think a couple of things we said we're hearing is distractions and time blocking. So I also heard that one size doesn't fit all, that we have to try different strategies to see what's going to be best for us. For those of you who don't know, here comes the cheap plug. We do have a 2x your time course that is available right now. You can go to our website, jbandthedoctor.com/courses, and you can get all that information. And there's a module strictly on distractions. There's also 2 different separate modules on 2 different ways to handle your time, one of them being blocking and one of them being more flexible. So, we know that you're not going to fit everything into the same way for the same person. Like if you look at JB and I's schedule, we do things very differently, both very productive, both very accomplished, but we don't do it the same way because we know that different strategies work a little bit different for us. But there's a lot of things that we do that are very similar in there too. There's some basic tools that work, and then there's also ways to modify it to make it fit for you. And so there's my cheap plug for our course. Again, jbandthedoctor.com/courses, 2 extra time mastery. We got you there. We got you covered. We know you're going in the year, you need some help. We want to make sure we got you covered.
I love it.
Let's jump back to one of these questions we had from somebody joining our group. They said their biggest challenge is just get back to routine. So thoughts on that? Maybe kick off here for just a minute or two. Why we fall off routines? What happens to make us fall off the wagon?
That was actually the first thing that came to mind for me. I'm like, so what made you stop the routine in the first place?
Well, there's holidays coming up, and I got interrupted, and there's a lot of stuff going on. I can't. I got stuff I got to do.
What?
That was an
A
awesome
sale
question
came
about
across the
Austin
screen,
Bergman,
right? You're like, ooh, flash sale.
By the way, that is not what Austin sounds like. I know Austin.
That was my own interpretation of what the response could be. But that question was from Austin Bergman, who is a recent podcast guest of ours. So, and we know very accomplished. So it shows even someone as accomplished as he is struggles with sometimes just falling off routines because we're human. Don't lose sight of that. Sometimes it's okay. You're all right to fall off of stuff. It's how you just get back and you go from there. Don't beat yourself up for doing it. Just realize that you need to do it and get back on. Now you guys can say something more eloquent.
Now we got to follow that.
Right?
Damn. But I mean, when it comes to the routine, yeah, my first thing would be what made you stop in the first place? And then whose routine is it? Were you following a routine that somebody told you needed to create? Or are you following a routine that actually goes with what you need to be doing for your business? Because that's different. Because it's like what you just said, Doc and JB, you guys have similar strategies that you use, but then you also have others that help you even better. And y'all are both getting things done. But if I had to say, okay, I'm going to set this routine for you all, starting at 7:30 and then at 6, boom, give it to both of you, follow it. Chances are neither one of you will follow it. Why? Because it doesn't go with who you are. It doesn't tap into your strengths. It doesn't tap into the things that you actually are passionate about. And very basic, you didn't do it yourself. I gave it to you. So there's also that. Like, damn, I don't want to do what she's telling me to do. She didn't talk to me. She didn't include me in this. She just created something based on what she thinks we needed, and we don't want to do it. So I would be like, hey, how did you come up with that supposed routine that you had before? And what about it wasn't working? Because clearly something wasn't working to make you fall off of it.
I love something the doc says all the time. We're all spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. So we all fall on a spectrum, and it's true with our values and our beliefs too. And if the routine is aligned with your values and your beliefs, you're very likely to adopt it. It doesn't mean your values and beliefs can't change, and something that's not in your value and belief system today couldn't be tomorrow, and that might open up a new routine or the ability to do something new. But if you do try to adopt something like Andy Frisella 75 hard, right, and you're just not that person. You don't work out, you don't do this, you don't do that, you like to drink and socialize, and it's like, that's impossible. You can't drink for 75 days. So if you like to drink when you socialize, like, you literally can't do that program. You're not going to manage to that routine. And even if you do manage to it for 75 days, guess what's going to happen on day 76? Right off that wagon, right? Exactly to Austin's point.
Which I can attest to for many people I spoke to that have done that.
Yeah.
Some very successful and felt great about it, but also, I asked them what happened right after. Oh, no, I went back to what I did. Because it didn't fit their lifestyle. It didn't fit what their needs were. Yeah. And I think that's super important is, that's why we keep saying one size doesn't fit all. You have to make it fit for you.
Yeah. But if you have that belief, then your behaviors will follow that belief. So if you firmly believe, hey, if I can wake up every single day and it's going to change my life and I'm going to be a millionaire next year because I'm doing this 5 a.m. routine, you're a lot more likely to manage that 5 a.m. routine if you actually believe that. Not if you tell yourself you believe it, but if you actually believe it, right?
Yeah.
Which means you live it. And that's the thing. It goes into the world of almost ritual. It becomes religious.
I believe I'll be asleep at 5 a.m.
Well, you will be.
So will I.
I'll be up. You'll be asleep.
I also believe that if you follow JB, if you followed Priscilla's, Dr. P's description of what your routine should be, you'd be sitting around for 2.5 hours in the morning not knowing what to do with yourself.
Yes. So that is a classic example of, I ain't gonna follow her routine. It's like, shh. But then what happens for that 2.5 hours? Because if he's up at 5 o'clock and my routine for him is starting at 7:30, then the distractions and all the squirrels are like, oh my God, I could do this, I could do that. Then before you know it, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and he ain't done jack shit all this and chase those squirrels all over the place. And it's like, oh, this routine thing ain't working for me. But it's because it, like he said, it doesn't go with his values, with his beliefs, what he really wanted to do. It doesn't. So right. I would say, look at that so-called routine. Was it the best one for you?
It reminds me when I was young and I worked in the corporate world, and I worked in an office and my day started at 10 a.m. But yeah, I was single, I was young, I had nothing going on. So I'd come in at like 9, but I wouldn't work. I just distract everybody else. I just be there's like, and after like a week, my manager's like, you can't come in early anymore. Not letting you come in anymore. You're not doing anything. You're hurting the rest of the team. I'm like, oh. So, anyways, it's that reminded me of that story. Step one, you fall off a routine, I guess, is identify, is that really a routine that aligns with your beliefs, right? Or are you falling off because it's really not a great routine for you to be on in the first place? Just because it works doesn't mean it works well for you, right? It can work. Anything can work for somebody if they're consistent with it. I'm a big believer in that, but nothing will work if it doesn't work for you. So that would be step one. Just kind of identify, does this really align with my lifestyle and my beliefs?
Yep.
Next step?
Prioritize.
Yeah.
You got to identify what are your priorities. And like I used to tell people in the school system, everything is not a priority. Everything cannot be priority number one because we can only do one thing at a time. So sit down, and if you got 10 things, you got to sit and rank them 1 to 10 so you can figure out which ones are the priority for you. And then figure out what time of day you're most productive. Contrary to the beliefs that are forced down us, not everybody's productive at 7:30 in the morning. You know, some of us are productive at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So knowing when you're most productive and then putting in those things that are your priorities to help you out.
I'm going to go step 0 because I think all these things
he's not undermining me at all.
I think it's all great. I think what you're saying is absolutely right if the routine is broken for a reason, right? But sometimes maybe Austin or anyone else that has the same challenge might be doing this routine very well for like 50 weeks of a year. And they've been doing it consistently because it is the right routine for them, and they've been nailing it, and they know it's good for them, and it gets everything they need accomplished. But they're exhausted and they need a break, and their body's just saying like, hey, take a day off, take a week off, take 2 weeks off. And then, so just do step 0 first, just reassess like, hey, did I just need a break? Was I just a little tired and burnt out? And if I try now to get back on the routine, can I hop right back on? Am I now rested enough? Am I reset, refreshed, that I can just hop right back into that routine that was good for me? So, you know, we're human. Sometimes we just need a break. Sometimes we're just a little exhausted and we just say, hey, that routine's not working for today. I mean, even someone as like machine as JB is taking a few days off from working out for one reason or another, right? Like sometimes you hurt yourself, sometimes you're just exhausted, sometimes you traveled and you just need a break. But what happens is you go back to it, and so first just assess if you need it, if it really is something you broke or if it's just exhaustion, and then go through all those great steps that they just said.
Well, that's really well put, Doc. You know, assess first what caused the stop in the routine. You know, and then identify if it truly is a routine that you should be doing or adapting or refining, and then prioritize, where does this fit on my list of what I need to get done? You do those things, and I think you'll find yourself back on track in most instances. Great feedback there.
And if you can't figure out by yourself, you got 3 coaches here who can help you. So that's my cheap plug there.
Absolutely.
You forgot to do the alert.
Forgot to do the intro music.
So I think as we're coming to the end here, now we talked about routines and goals. And did I purposely mention that because I knew we'd run out of time and would be able to lead you into our next few weeks inside the EML lab, where we're going to talk about the difference between goals and routines and really getting you set for the new year?
Link is right there.
That was a cliffhanger. Maybe I'm just piquing your interest to learn more about that because we will be talking about it. And just, you know, a little precursor, as Dr. P alluded to earlier, is forget about resolutions and work on goals and work on strategies. And we're going to talk a lot more about that upcoming because resolutions just resolve you to do nothing. And goals and strategy actually give you a plan to do it. And we're going to definitely go into that. But there's your teaser about how much you're going to learn from us. So make sure you are staying tuned to everything great that we're going to be doing inside the lab, getting you started to start this year off right.
I love it.
And I got to say, Dr. P, I'm I enjoyed you joining us last time as a guest commenter, but I enjoyed you even more here as a guest coach. So I hope this is not a one and done. I love having you join us. It's been fantastic talking with you. Awesome insight. And thanks for putting up with this one over here, whichever direction he is on your screen, people. That
I was just pointing to both of you. I'm putting up both of you.
Yeah, I appreciate you helping me not have to do all the heavy lifting today.
Oh, damn.
Man, really need to get him that Christmas gift.
That's how
You
know
should
I
have
love
got
you.
him that Christmas gift.
But that's how you know I love you. If I don't pick on you, then you have no hope.
Right.
Place in my heart.
That is part of y'all's thing you got going on. That's why y'all are JB and the doctor. That's why.
Hey,
Y'all
Doc.
compliment each other.
Dr. P, real quick, if anybody wants to catch up with you or get in touch with you outside of the episode here, we'll have your information in the podcast show notes. But anybody happening to listen live, how can they get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Instagram at dr.pksolutions. I am also on Facebook, Priscilla Kuser Consulting Solutions, and on LinkedIn, Priscilla Kuser Consulting Solutions. And then my website is www.drpksolutions.com. Oh, yeah, and I'm also on YouTube and podcast.
Perfect. I got the website in the comments there, so anybody can check that out in the comments if you happen to be catching this after the fact. And if we don't see or speak to any of you all between now and the new year, happy New Year. And if you're listening to this after the fact, I can still wish you a happy New Year.
Yes, you can.
That's kind of funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a hard time clicking on anything right now, Dr. P is also a valued member of the EML Lab. She's inside our Facebook group, so it's an easy place just to click right on it, and it'll take you to all her stuff.
Yep.
So we
I'm in
try to make things easy. And if you want to find us, you can find us again in the Facebook group, the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab, EML. We have our podcast that you might be listening to this on right now, but if you're in the group and didn't know that, we have a podcast by the same name. And you can find us on all social media at JB and the Doctor or at jbandthedoctor.com.
Yeah. Very easy to find us all. This was great, y'all. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Dr. P.
All right.
We'll see you guys all soon. And check out our live. Don't forget, next month, the last Tuesday of every month, we'll be doing this. So you've been warned.
Right. We got to do one of these like live, like all three of us in Florida.
Yeah, this is good. This is good.
Yes, we're going to be back to live soon too for that. Yeah.
All right. All right, y'all.
Be easy, everybody.
Peace out, y'all.